Hi guys, Ali Duzette here, medical intuitive and astrologer, and I wanted to check in a week after the grand planetary alignment. This was a really fascinating event. So this is what happened. I made a video about it, the grand planetary alignment, and this grand planetary alignment, what that meant was that in the early morning of June 24th, last Friday, if you went outside and looked at the horizon, you would see first Saturn, and then Jupiter, then Mars, and then Venus, and then Mercury, all lining up in the sky in a single line, which is really unusual, hasn't happened in a really long time, and interestingly is not considered an astrological event. Astrologers didn't have their eyes on this really because it's not really doing much. All this gunk in the middle of a chart is what people really care about. And if the things in the chart are really close to each other. A good example of that is in this chart, the North Node and Pallas right here. They're just 3 degrees apart. You'd keep an eye on that. But there's nothing in here that's like super, super interesting. This was considered an astronomical event where astronomers thought it would be cool to look at in their telescopes, even though the math didn't line up for astrologers to care. All of this is math. This is just geometry and angles. Is everything lining up in a mathematical way? That's what astrologers look at. So I interpreted this event as if it were astrologically significant. And I guessed that we were going to see sometime close to the 24th of June, a reassessment and maybe a karmic retribution, or we would see the consequences of a humanitarian act gone wrong. That is the Saturn in Aquarius retrograde. Then I thought that since we were seeing Jupiter and Mars next in Aries, we would see a massive expansion of conflict and kind of fiery conflict. And it would probably have to do with Venus issues because Venus was next in the parade. Venus in Gemini in particular deals with feminine sexuality, and kind of like the idea of hookup culture would fall into that. And it was going to deal with also Mercury in Gemini. Gemini is the twins. It's going to be a split. I thought this is going to end with a split psyche, so whatever we're going to see after this grand planetary alignment, we're going to see a humanitarian act gone wrong, and all of the eyes of America are going to be looking at it. And then, well, I'll come back to that. Massive expansion of conflict involving feminine energies somehow. I mean, Venus also governs motherhood. And then it's going to end with this Mercury in Gemini, which is going to be double-mindedness. Okay, 1, 2 halves. And I recorded that video, if you can believe it, at 9 a.m. Eastern time on the date of the grand planetary alignment. And just 1 hour later, we had the Roe v. Wade overturn. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that so super crazy? Because what exactly did we see? We saw exactly what I described. No matter how you view Roe v. Wade and the overturn that went along with it, I think we can all agree that there are flavors of a societal emphasis on humanitarianism that has gone wrong, right? From the pro-abortion perspective, or the pro-choice perspective, I guess we can call it. We're seeing the humanitarian act gone wrong of all those pro-lifers that are trying to shut down choice. On the other hand, you have the pro-lifers that are saying, well, we're righting the wrong of 60 million babies aborted. And on both sides of the aisle, I think people can agree that they are feeling like we have reassessed a humanitarian act and something about it has gone wrong. What was the original thing wrong? Was the, this overturn wrong? Whatever you feel is represented right here with this Saturn in Aquarius retrograde. This Jupiter and Mars together in Aries, they lined right up. That massive expansion of violent energy, this conflict energy. And sure enough, I could not believe it. Just 1 hour later, my Facebook feed is exploding. Get it? Like Mars in Aries. And everybody is talking about their very strong opinions about abortion and Roe v. Wade. What an incredible indicator of this grand planetary alignment. Then, of course, it had everything to do with Venus and Gemini. This is going to deal with, here's the thing about Gemini. It's the twins. It can deal with, double-mindedness. It can deal with straddling the balance of, whatever. It's seeing two sides of the coin, okay? And talk about two sides of the coin with motherhood. Talk about two sides of the coin with feminine sexuality, where we have all eyes are now on hookup culture and the viability of everybody kind of sleeping around however they want if abortion can't be used as birth control. I've seen a lot of stuff about that. And of course, Venus in Gemini, Venus as the mother. Here we are, all of these big emotions around motherhood. And then what did it culminate in? It culminated in this grand psyche split where we have been just further divided. And I just think that that is so fascinating. I wanted to give you all an update because I wasn't sure that the grand planetary alignment was going to be that important. And then sure enough, it super was. That same date, we had this massive ruling here in the US, and it just exactly fit in with everything that I suspected it would. And in the moment, I could never have guessed that that's what this would look like. I mean, you can't look at this chart and be like, oh yes, this clearly indicates that Roe v. Wade will be overturned that day. Like, you would not pull this up and think that that was true, right? But now that I'm talking about it, I want to edit the chart and see. I believe it was released at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. So let's take a look at the chart of the Roe v. Wade overturn. Okay, so I haven't looked at this before. It just occurred to me to do this. And I want to mention that, of course, because I do live in the United States, my work tends to be obviously focused on the United States. And the stars are for everybody. The stars are for everybody in the whole world. So I get a lot of questions like, but what about in Australia? What about in these other places? The stars are also relevant for you there. But the thing is, I'm just not plugged into that politics. Like, I'm just not plugged into the news in those places as well. But these energies would have been influential in a variety of places, in a variety of ways. And one thing to note as well, I believe that this grand planetary alignment was only visible from the northern hemisphere. So it actually would not necessarily apply to, Australia, South America, but it would probably apply to Europe. But that's just something to be aware of. So let's look at the Roe v. Wade hearing, the overturn. This is a really interesting thing. This happened as the moon was getting really close to the North Node and Uranus. So Uranus is, I'll go back up. The moon in a chart for nations, a mundane chart, it's going to talk about the national focus and kind of like the national emotional mien. Is that the right word for it? How is everybody feeling in a nation? And the North Node is your destiny. It's like the purpose of whatever's going on. And the midheaven is similar to the North Node in that it's got this kind of destiny sort of energy to it. And so this is a really interesting thing that the moon is so close to the midheaven and the North Node at the time that this is being released to the public, that, by the time everybody gets wind of it, I heard about this at 10:30. So let's take a look at what it looks like if we move it forward 30 minutes. Okay, just checking. Not that big of a big shift, although it moves it a little further away from the midheaven. But it just is telling me that part of our destiny with this as a people was to have everybody feel their feelings about this. That's the midheaven. That is the North Node flavor, is to have the moon be right there. All of our feelings, it's our destiny to feel our feelings about this issue. And Uranus is unexpected events. Surprise. And look how close it is. Oh, it's at 17 degrees, 18 degrees. Is that midheaven? A big surprise event that kind of shook up a lot of people, right? Everybody was shaken up. And there's a bunch of states that had laws that were going to go into effect if Roe v. Wade were ever overturned. Suddenly they're in effect now. Surprise, you know. We had some big surprises that day. Very emotional day for basically everybody. I think it's really rare to find a person who honestly has no feelings about such a hot topic issue. So a day of everybody's emotions running wild as we were experiencing this unexpected event. Okay, and of course, Chiron, so close to Mars. Let's check. This is called the aspectarian. We're going to see if it was considered conjunct, and it was. That's this key to Mars. That key is going to be our soul wound, and that Mars is going to be a desire for conflict, or not necessarily a desire for conflict, but a little bit of hot-headedness. This is going to put us all at a greater risk of being easily offended and easily wounded in our interactions with other people. So that is a really interesting energy. And now a week later, we can see how that played out. That is one of the most interesting things about astrology in the moment. Like I said, you couldn't look at this chart and say, oh, yes, clearly, this is the chart of a massive ruling about abortion. You can't say that. But looking back and knowing that that's what this chart is about and seeing how it played out in the days afterwards, that is really, it's just really, really interesting. The sun was next to that part of fortune right there. Very interesting. To me, the part of fortune is like your treasure, and the sun is your sense of self, your sense of identity. And so I don't know exactly what to make of that, except that this was just a moment where I think on a national level, our true soul was kind of on display. Our treasure, our personal soul treasures were a little bit on display in, look at that. Oh no, wrong thing that I'm looking at. But in that kind of conflict and in the big feelings that everybody was feeling about motherhood and this big split in people's opinions. And once again, Scorpio, I've done a lot of videos on the Scorpio to Taurus axis that we're going through right now, but Scorpio is the hidden things. It deals with sex and death. It deals with abortion. And look at that south node that's dragging us away from Scorpio and to Taurus. And Taurus is the sign of kind of life. And just like, it doesn't, Taurus is not the energy that plants the seeds, and it's not the energy that creates the seeds, but it is the energy that once they're planted, it waters it, right? It grows it up, lets it flourish and thrive into whatever it is meant to become. So this is just a really interesting example of what this Scorpio to Taurus path can look like. Okay. I think that's it for now, but I just wanted to give you a quick update on that Roe v. Wade overturn that happened on the same date as the grand planetary alignment. I think in the future, I've got to start reading more astronomical material because I read astrological stuff, and astrologers don't care about stuff like this, but this clearly was really accurate. So I'm really interested to see what other things we're going to discover as I keep my eye peeled for other big astronomical events, and I will keep you posted. So thanks for being here, and I hope that you have a great day.